Well, hello, Bible Read Along fans. We're in week 2 of reading through the whole Bible together, and I hope that the first week has been a good experience for you. This week, we're going to be reading Genesis chapters 25 to 45. This is a big chunk of the book of Genesis. We're going to be almost finished with the first book of the Bible in only 2 weeks, and such an important book it is. Now, what is this section about? One way to think about the book of Genesis is it's explaining to the ancient Israelites both why the world is here and why the world is the way it is, and how in the world did we end up enslaved in Egypt. And so that story is kind of ongoing, but of course the larger story is still how God is fulfilling the promise that he made to Abraham. The promise to give his descendants the land, to make them a great nation, and especially through them to bless all the nations. And so we're seeing how generation after generation, despite lots of difficulties, God is bringing that promise to fulfillment. So how is he doing it? He's doing it by his grace through people who have an intergenerational legacy, quite frankly, of evil. These are people who are going to demonstrate on certain occasions great faith, but for the most part, they're going to demonstrate a lot of very dysfunctional and sinful behavior. We see favoritism from parents. We see conflict between brothers, something that takes us clear back to think about Cain and Abel at the beginning of the story. We see deceit, we see violence, or at least the threat of violence, and in several instances we see sexual immorality or unfaithfulness. So there's lots of reaping what one sows in this section. Favored sons are going to learn what it is to experience disfavor, and those who have been disfavored are going to be, in many cases, lifted up. If, for example, Jacob, the trickster, the master trickster of this story, is himself going to be tricked. And then the brothers, the sons of Jacob, who sell their brother Joseph into slavery, are themselves going to be threatened with enslavement until we'll finally see a coming back together of that family. But God's grace is demonstrated through all of this. In the midst of the story, God will continue to bless the childless with children, elevating women who would otherwise be disparaged by that means. He is going to impel estranged brothers to be reconciled, bringing good in situations that they intend for evil. And so the covenant promise is going to continue. It's going to pass through a line that is selective. Abraham will have 2 sons, Ishmael and Isaac, but it is through Isaac that the promise will come. Isaac will have 2 sons, Esau and Jacob, but it will be through the younger one, Jacob, that the promise will come. And then we'll see Jacob have 12 sons with 4 different women, an incredibly complicated and dysfunctional family. But these 12 are going to become the patriarchs, that is, the progenitors of the 12 tribes of Israel, an idea that will carry us through the rest of the Old Testament. Now, to this group of people, this emerging tribe on its way to becoming a very large tribe, a nation, if you will, as we would have thought of this in the ancient world, God gives a rite of initiation that marks them as belonging to his people. It's circumcision, the surgical removal of the male foreskin. Why this symbol? Well, that's difficult to say, but we can say what it means. It means that they are effectively marked out as belonging to God's people in anticipation of the fulfillment of God's promise. And even as this is happening, as God is marking people as belonging to him, there's always blessing for those who are outside of this covenant, because ultimately God goes into covenant with these people so that through this people, and we'll see through one of these people, namely Jesus, all nations will be blessed. Well, along the way, we're reading the Psalms too. Again, many of the Psalms we'll read this week will be calling out to God in distress, as so many of the Psalms do. Others are going to express confidence in God, praise for what God is doing, the way he abides with his people and protects them, for God's great power. I want to draw your attention especially to Psalm 8, because it exalts God and then says, God, this is what you have intended humans to be. It's a reflection on the story of creation that we've read. And Psalm 14, which, like Psalm 2, is going to be another expression of the awareness of the way that human beings have taken God's good world and turned it into a chaotic place because of their rebellion. So, happy reading this week.